In just 50 short years, Britain went through this absolutely incredible transformation. It went from being the height of a global empire to the brink of total annihilation, and then reemerged as something completely new. We're going to dive into that journey, that first half of the 20th century. It's an amazing story of war, innovation, and revolution that really did shape the Britain we know today. So here's our roadmap. We've got four main parts. We'll kick things off in the shadow of the Great War, then see how that led to the division of Ireland. After that, we'll check out the dazzling, but kind of fragile, boom of the interwar years before plunging right into the fight for survival that was the Second World War. All right, let's get right into Section 1, because before all the devastation of war, Britain was in a very different place. At the turn of the century, Britain was just radiating confidence. I mean, it wasn't just this global superpower with a massive empire. It was also making real social progress, bringing in things like old age pensions and free school meals. It was a country that was really looking forward to the future. So think of this as the before picture, okay? And then, just like that, in a single moment, everything changed. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in June 1914, that was the spark. It lit a fire across the whole continent, setting off this chain reaction that just pulled Europe into the Great War. It was one event that changed everything. So the year you've got to remember? 1914. So Europe pretty much split right down the middle into two giant alliances. You had Britain, with France and Russia leading the Allied powers, and on the other side were the Central Powers, led by Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This wasn't just a European fight either. The entire British Empire got pulled in. A quick way to remember it? Britain was with the Allies. The human cost of this new kind of industrial war was, it was almost unimaginable. Just look at this number, 60,000. That's how many British casualties there were on the very first day of the Battle of the Somme. It's a truly shocking number to remember, isn't it? After 4 long, brutal years, the war finally came to an end with an Allied victory. The armistice was signed, and the guns fell silent at this very precise moment, 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. That's an easy one to recall. Just think of all the ones in 11/11 at 11. But, the end of the Great War didn't bring peace for everyone. As we move into our next section, we're going to see that in Ireland, a really long and complex struggle for independence was about to just explode into open conflict. The road to partition was messy. It all started with a British promise of home rule, but that got put on hold because of the war. That delay just fueled the fire for the Easter Rising Rebellion, which sparked a really bitter guerrilla war that finally led to a peace treaty and, in 1922, the division of the island. There are 5 key steps to remember that literally redrew the map. But dividing the island didn't stop the conflict. Nope. Instead, it planted the seeds for decades of violence in Northern Ireland, a period that would become known simply as the Troubles. You need to remember the name of this conflict. It's absolutely key to understanding modern history. Okay, let's shift gears and look at that time between the 2 great wars. It was such a time of incredible contrasts, a decade of amazing progress, but also shadowed by a massive economic crisis. You can see that contradiction right here. On one hand, you had brand new industries like cars and aviation just booming, and culture was blossoming. But on the other hand, the Great Depression hits in 1929, leading to mass unemployment in the old, heavy industries like shipbuilding. Really, think of this as a tale of 2 Britons. One was thriving, the other was really, really struggling. But even with all that economic gloom, this was a golden age for innovation. The BBC started its radio broadcasts and then, get this, launched the world's first regular television service in 1936. Culturally, it was a super vibrant time with famous writers and radical new economic ideas. So remember this, the radio and TV that dominate our world today, they were born right here. And that brings us to our final section, the Second World War. After a very fragile peace, Britain once again found itself in a fight for its actual existence. For years, Britain had tried everything to appease Hitler, just desperate to avoid another terrible war. But when Hitler invaded Poland in 1939, that was the last straw. Britain and France declared war, and the world was plunged into conflict all over again. The key date to remember for the start of WWI is 1939.
By 1940, the situation was honestly desperate. France had fallen. Britain and its empire stood pretty much completely alone against the Nazi war machine. And it was in this moment, the nation's darkest hour, that Winston Churchill became prime minister. This is the golden rule to remember. When things were darkest, Churchill stepped in.
Right after that incredible evacuation of over 300,000 soldiers from the beaches of Dunkirk, Churchill gave one of the most powerful speeches in history. It just perfectly captured the nation's will to fight on. You should remember this quote as the sound of pure defiance.
See, to invade Britain, Hitler had to control the skies first. But in the summer of 1940, the pilots of the Royal Air Force met the German Air Force head-on, and, against all odds, they won the critical Battle of Britain. That victory prevented a German invasion. Remember the names of the planes that saved Britain: Spitfire and Hurricane.
Churchill just perfectly captured the country's gratitude for those heroic RAF pilots with these immortal words. This quote brilliantly illustrates their bravery, doesn't it? So, the Battle of Britain was won, but the danger was far from over. German bombers started a relentless campaign of night raids on British cities, what we know as the Blitz. But out of all that terror, this incredible sense of national unity and resilience was born, a quality that became known as the Blitz spirit. This is a key phrase to remember about the British character in wartime. The tide really started to turn when the USA entered the war in 1941. From that point on, the Allied forces just steadily gained the upper hand, which led to the massive D-Day landings in Normandy, the final defeat of Germany in May 1945, and then victory over Japan that August. Remember the turning point: D-Day, 1944. So, when you step back and look at the whole picture, it's just an astonishing transformation. In just half a century, Britain goes from this confident superpower to a nation on the absolute brink of defeat, and then reemerges, totally changed by war, by social upheavals, and these huge technological leaps. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How did these events define the Britain of today?